Welcome to the Ride With Us podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Prescott Rodeo grounds and the world's oldest rodeo. Its history, traditions, some storytelling, and all the events happening at the rodeo grounds. I'm your host, Greg Mengarelli, and it's a true pleasure to have our resident historian here with me today, Danny Rogers. Danny, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Glad to be here.
Danny, I love hearing your stories and your history. You're like I was going to say a walking encyclopedia, but you actually keep updating. So you're more like a walking Wikipedia. But you always amaze me with how you retain facts and know our history, and I always appreciate reading the little tidbits you put in our Prescott Frontier Days newsletter of the different history items that you put in there. Always very interesting. Very important that we're doing this. I'm so glad you're here. We're going to talk about women in rodeo. We're tipping our hats to women in rodeo this year, as you know.
Yes.
And I know there's a lot of women in our history. We've had the Volds in here, Kirsten and Karen, and we've had in our past Sarah Kekeffer, Julie Jutton. We had a couple of girls from the office that are putting together the college rodeo. I'm probably forgetting somebody, but we have a lot of women involved in our rodeo, thankfully, and they bring a very important aspect. But today, I wanted to focus with you on the women in rodeo that really are at the foundation and the beginnings of our rodeo. And I know that I mentioned to you in preparation, hey, if you could find about 6, and you said, well, it's going to be hard to limit it to that, Greg, and that's fine. But I'll turn it over to you, Danny, and let's have a conversation and see what you found in terms of women in rodeo, going back to our early beginnings.
If I was to ask you, what year do you think was the first year we had women in rodeo as contestants?
So the question is, the first woman as a contestant in the world's oldest rodeo.
Right.
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to say 1898.
Well, you're close.
Okay.
We started in 1888, and in 1889, Lizzie Dylan won our cow pony race.
1889.
Yes.
The second year.
The second year we had women in rodeo. Women have been a part of rodeo ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And it was a pony race.
Cow pony race, yes. It was for the kids, and there was always a cow pony. Until the 1940s, 1940 was the last year they ever had a cow pony race.
Okay. And that was just a straight run race.
Yeah, as far as I know, sometimes you can't find details.
Okay.
You know, it's like I found different events, and we will talk about those later. But, there are things that you couldn't find the details on them. So
wow, women go all the way back to the second year of our rodeo. That's amazing.
They've always been there.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. What else did you find?
Well, our rodeo in 1940 had an interesting fact that most people would never think about.
Okay.
How many rodeo queens do you think we had that year?
1940. Well, in this era, you have one rodeo queen, then you have junior court and so on. So I would assume there'd be, one rodeo queen.
Right. But, 1939 is the first year we ever had a rodeo queen.
Okay.
And her name was Phyllis Tonnage.
Tonnage. Okay.
Yes. But in 1940, we had an interesting thing happen. Jane and June Bellard were twins.
Okay.
So for the only time in our history of our rodeo, they didn't know which one to declare the winner. They made 2 rodeo queens that year.
Well, if they're twins and they look alike, that's a tough one, right?
Yeah, they were identical twins. So we actually had, that's probably the first that's ever happened. And I don't think it's ever, probably not at any other rodeo ever happened. That way you had actually two
queens in 1940.
2 queens in 1940.
Interesting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I think you can find all kinds of things out about the queens. I brought a little thing on here that's actually one family. I'm sure you're going to know the names of some of these people. Chuck Shepard's family.
We have talked a lot about Chuck Shepard on the show.
Okay, we're going to talk about the ladies.
Very good.
Okay, Lorraine Carter in 1942 was our rodeo queen.
Okay.
And Stella Shepard in 1959 was our rodeo queen.
All right.
These are all from one family.
Pretty prolific rodeo queen family
Right.
then.
April Fletcher in 1962 was our rodeo queen.
And these are all from the same family.
This is from the same family. I'm not done. Linda Shepard in 1965, she was a rodeo queen. Rhonda Stewart, Junior Bonner, same time as Junior Bonner. She was a rodeo queen. You may have met Rhonda during the Junior Bonner time period.
Right.
And Jerry Lewis was an attendant
Okay.
in 1979. Yeah, and Jerry still works locally. Rhonda works here locally too.
Right.
Okay?
Wow. That's amazing. All from one family.
All from one family. And Stella Shepard, there's a story in here that I found that I thought was kind of funny that Linda Shepard, I'm sorry. Linda Johnson had just defeated Barry Goldwater, and Linda Bird Shepard, after her grandmother, and Stella Bird Carter, and her name was spoken, sounded the same as the one of the president's daughter, Linda Bird Johnson. As part of Budge's opening remarks, Budge Ruffner, of course,
Right.
he made, he was warming up and trying to make Linda feel at ease, and she totally got upset. She said, "We have here Arizona's answer to Washington, Linda Bird Johnson."
Oh, no.
And it totally embarrassed her, and she almost lost her composure.
Oh, my gosh. So you're talking about Linda Shepard, who's actually now Linda Keekeffer, out on the K4 Ranch, married to John
Yes.
Keekeffer. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And she's around the rodeo a lot, even
Even
today.
now, yes.
Yep. And the mother of Rick and Johnny Keekeffer.
Right.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Lots of history there with rodeo queens and
Okay, let's go on beyond rodeo queens, though.
Yes.
I mean, I just wanted to touch on the rodeo queens. How about women that actually, what do you think is the only year that we actually had team ropers that were women?
the first women team ropers, or are you saying the only year? The only time?
The only year that we actually had women team ropers.
Wow. I wouldn't know where to start, Danny.
1942.
42.
There was a lack of men during the war, and they still
Oh.
wanted ropers, and so they needed team ropers. And so they made a mother-daughter, or father-daughter, or this kind of combination, or maybe uncle-cousin.
Okay.
And there are 6 of them. Elladine Hayes and Ray Hayes, and they got a first on the 3rd day and no other time. Barbie Fritchie and Les Van Horbeck, they got a second on the 3rd day and no other time. Christina Atkins and Ernest Sweet, they had no time, 3rd and a 4th and no time. Betty Lou Aiken, no time, 2nd, and no time, no time. Now, and Betty Lou Aiken was with Charlie Matley.
Okay.
The Matley Brother Ranch out there?
Okay.
Yeah, that's the same family there. Okay. Lorraine Carter, it's a name that we mentioned earlier, right? As a rodeo queen.
Right.
She was rodeo queen here in 1942, and they won 1st, 2nd. They won 1st, 3rd, and 2nd.
Wow.
And that was Lorraine Carter and Court Carter.
So Lorraine was a pretty talented lady as a rodeo queen and a team roper.
And a team roper. And
Wow.
1942 is the only year we had that. I think that is such a novelty of our rodeo that, we actually had, because of the war, we allowed women in there. And that, I think, modern day rodeo, I do believe, is starting to allow in. I was talking to our rodeo secretary, and she says they're starting to allow some women into team roping. So it's something that's coming about.
Okay. Okay.
But it's never been,
Understood.
at this time. Yeah.
It makes sense because of the shortage of men because of the war.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very good. Other contestants, women contestants, Danny, that we had at our rodeo?
Yes. How about barrel racers?
Yeah.
1959 barrel racer was, I'm sorry. Yeah. See, I messed up there. 59 is Phyllis Tunnage. I said she was our first barrel racer.
1959 was
Right.
the first year we had a barrel racer.
Right. 1939 is the first year we had queens.
Yep. So Danny, when did we start breakaway roping?
I believe it was 3 years ago. And the neat thing about breakaway roping, I still don't even have any of the facts on who the people are, how fast the time is. But if you blink, you're going to miss the event. It's 2.3, 3.2, maybe. I mean, I haven't seen anything below a 2.7 at our rodeo, but it could be a lot faster even.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I don't get to see very many performances. I'm always working.
Oh, yeah.
During the rodeo.
Well, Jim Dewey Brown, our general manager, he brought that in, of course, as you know, and he liked to put that right after the tie down roping.
Right.
Because spectators are watching and the calf's tied. And of course, the calf still gets up and takes off after they, do the 3-leg tie down with the pig and string. But he liked doing the calf getting away after the tie down rope.
Right. And that's the third event that women got involved in. And that's what's really neat about it.
Right. Right. Well, barrel racing, breakaway, and then are you talking about team roping?
Queens.
Oh, Queens. Yes, yes, yes.
Although we had team roping. Yes, that we mentioned earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Queens, we started in 39, barrel racing in 59, and breakaway in 2022.
Yes. Got it. Yep. Well, it adds a lot to our performance, I believe, and I'm really glad Jim Dewey brought that to our rodeo.
Now, I got another interesting fact for you, just to change the subject a little bit again.
All right.
Louise Serpa.
Louise Serpa.
Yes. It's a name that most people probably won't know, but she was a rodeo photographer.
Okay.
First woman to ever receive a PRCA card to take pictures at a rodeo.
Oh.
And I believe it's 1983. I might be wrong, but it's close to 83 or 84.
First lady to get her PRCA card to be a photographer, and it was 1983.
That she was at Prescott.
At our rodeo.
Yes, she filmed all the Prescott Tucson rodeos for years, and she's a Hall of Fame person because of that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of firsts, and I know on another segment we're going to talk about some other firsts for our rodeo, but there's a lot of firsts, even here as we talk about women in rodeo, where they show up in Prescott for the first time, like this photographer.
Right. That was her first time here, although she did junior rodeos and she did collegiate rodeos. Eventually she got into the college circuit, and 1 year she did here.
Okay.
And I got to meet her, and she was a nice lady,
Nice.
Yeah.
You go that far back.
I go clear back to the 70s.
You know a lot of this firsthand, Danny.
It seems that way. My first chairmanship was in 1977.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what else do you have for women in rodeo for World's Oldest Rodeo?
Well, some of the things I brought, just because I wasn't sure where we wanted to go, was Nancy Shepard.
Yes.
Nancy Shepard is going to be our Grand Marshal. She's going to be 95 years old this year.
Wow.
She was bragging about being 94 years old last year at the Old Timers. I've known Nancy for several years now because I get the privilege of going to the Old Timers.
Okay.
And she was bragging about that she was 90. There's only one person older than me in PRCA.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And her parents were CTA, Cowboy Turtles Association.
Yes.
Those are the originators of rodeo.
Yes.
And her dad was actually a CTA member. And but Nancy Shepard, she is a Western ranching family. She's born in 1929. That tells you exactly how old she is.
Right.
She is the first. Here's another first. We're talking about first. She's the first woman, probably still the only one, that was using two ropes at the same time while standing Roman.
Wow.
Yes. She was taught by Dick Griffith. That name will come up again and again. That had something to do with her training. And she's just been around. She's, like I said, she's a wonderful person. She put together a cookbook. She's Pro Hall of Fame. She's in the Pro Hall of Fame, Rodeo Hall of Fame. And you just want to meet the kindest person you will ever meet, just talking about Nancy.
Right. And she'll be our Grand Marshal this year in the parade.
Yes, she's going to be our Grand Marshal.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah. And she's a special person. She went in under contract personnel. There's different areas you can go. I don't know if you know this or not, but there are different areas that you can go in into the PRCAS. You can go in as a bareback saddle bronc, bull riding, or contract personnel.
Okay.
Or team roping, also team roping and calf roping or tie down roping as
Sure.
we call it now.
But Nancy was contract personnel.
Contract personnel. That's like our clowns, our stock
Yep.
contractors.
Yep.
That's all.
And she was performing as a specialty act, essentially, with her roping.
Yes. It says in this article I read that the first time she performed, she was 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then from that, she created a career.
And then she traveled around the country doing this.
Yes, several years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what era, you said she was born in 1929.
48, she was our trick rider.
So Nancy Shepard in 1949 was our trick rider. 48, excuse me.
Yeah,
1948.
48, she was our trick rider.
Okay. Nice.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now,
So Danny, I was going to ask you, her career then was in the late 40s that she was traveling the country doing this kind of thing?
40s all up the way up into the 50s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. What an amazing thing that we have Nancy Shepard right here, and thankfully can honor her this year as the Grand Marshal for all
she
that
she still lives in Globe.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Yes.
And she's been coming up to the Old Timers event that you have as a part of our rodeo.
Right. She's been coming since the first year in 83, I believe.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you said earlier that she's the oldest or second oldest person.
She was saying that she is the second oldest person with a PRCA card.
Gotcha. And she'll be 90. She's 95 this year.
She'll be 95. I think there's somebody a little bit older than her.
Okay.
Unless he's passed.
Well, everybody listening, when you're at the parade, you'll be able to see Nancy Shepard leading the parade out as the Grand Marshal this year. So
and that's a living legend.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, what else do you have?
Well, let's talk about another living legend that's a woman.
Yes.
Her name is Karen Womack.
Karen Womack. Okay.
You ever hear of Karen Womack?
I haven't.
Now, if I told you her name was Karen Womack Vold, you might know who she is.
Oh, Karen Womack Vold.
Yes.
Actually, Danny, I had her in studio with her daughter, Kirsten, and we talked some about Karen's career. Well, she comes from a rodeo family, as you know, and grew up right here in Phoenix.
Right.
Yes.
Well, the interesting thing about Karen, and I've known her all my life. I've called her Mrs. Vold every time I've seen her since I was a little kid. And Mr. Vold. I called Harry Mr. Vold because that's the way we were raised.
Right.
Anyhow, but the interesting thing about Karen, she was our 1958 team trick rider here.
1958 trick rider.
Yes, in Prescott.
Wow.
And then in 1972, she came back with this guy named Harry Vold. And our United States flag used to be brought in, and I believe it's till 1985, in the presenting of the colors.
Yes.
Karen presented the flag. And then the next 6 or 7 years after that, Kirsten presented the flag because she was a little girl by then.
Sure.
And, but she didn't like that. She wanted to be in the back with livestock. And Karen just said enough's enough,
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Karen told me on the other show that her introduction to Harry was Harry hiring her to be the trick rider for a rodeo. And that's the first time she met Harry.
Right.
So, two legends in rodeo coming together. What a great thing we have in our history to have the Vold Rodeo Company, the Harry Vold Rodeo Company.
And now we're talking about a third legend.
All right.
Kirsten Vold.
Kirsten, yes.
Her daughter.
Right. Karen's daughter.
Right. Mm-hmm. And she is running the Vold Rodeo Company.
Right.
Harry passed away in 2017.
Yes. And
Kirsten took over and changed the name to Vold Rodeo Company. Before that was Harry Vold Rodeo Company.
Right.
And it became, she's done a fantastic job.
Absolutely.
I have never seen our stock drop off or anything else.
Right.
The stock wins more than the Cowboys do sometimes out there.
Absolutely.
And that's an attribute to what we have for stock contractors.
Well, you're making a great commercial here for the other episode that we did, Danny, with Karen and Kirsten Vold. So thank you. If you're listening now and you didn't listen to the Vold rodeo episode, you need to do that. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But I'm glad you brought them up.
Yeah. I just really wanted to make sure that they were touched on.
Yeah.
I can go on and on. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. I think you've done a great job covering a lot of the women in rodeo, a lot of stuff that I didn't know, and I'm sure our listeners didn't know about the first woman contestant in 1980 or 1889.
Right.
And all the queens, of course, you would expect that, but the twins that were queens, and then the team ropers in 1942. And then all the great legends, particularly Nancy Shepard this year. I'm so glad that I'm sure you had something to do with putting her name forward to be our Grand Marshal.
I wish I would have.
Yeah. Well, you would take credit, right?
Yeah. No, I don't do that. I don't ever take credit for what I don't do.
Well, I sure appreciate you bringing light to women in rodeo at the world's oldest rodeo. Thank you for all you do for our organization. You're a great asset. Like I said, just a living Wikipedia for us, always having the answer. If you don't have the answer, usually you do, but if you don't have the answer, you can find it. And I sure appreciate it. It's so important. It's important to memorialize these women that really helped the world's oldest rodeo and really generally the sport of rodeo across the country, because there's so much that started here in Prescott, Arizona with the world's oldest rodeo.
Prescott, we'll use that in the next segment. But one of the things, Grace Sparks, she was a woman, and she was probably the biggest promoter of rodeo that we had at that time period.
Yes. People don't know probably who Grace Sparks is, Danny, and this is a great way to end the show. They see that the armory, the meeting space there on Gurley Street, is named after Grace Sparks, of course. But let's talk a little bit about Grace Sparks, who was a huge promoter, who was a part of the organization, if you will, at that time of making sure the rodeo happened. Tell us a little bit more about Grace Sparks and her role with our rodeo.
Well, Grace Sparks was responsible for a couple of things. I believe she's the one that actually plugged in the sayings that we have: stay cowboy, turn 'em out wild.
Okay.
She was kind of responsible for that. She was a promoter. She worked for the chamber. So she always put our rodeo first.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I see in a lot of photos, Danny, when I'm looking through different history books on the rodeo, Grace Sparks is a centralized figure in our early days of rodeo. And she is somebody that should be mentioned here when we talk about women in rodeo, particularly for our rodeo, of course, being a promoter, a community member that believed in the sport, that got behind it and ensured that we had a good rodeo. Right. So I'm glad you brought her name up.
And there's one other name I really mean to bring up.
Okay.
In 1987, Prescott Frontier Days had its first woman president.
Oh, okay. 1987.
1987. Mary Borgen.
Mary Borgen in 1987.
Yes, and she was an exceptional president.
Well, we have a current woman president that does a fabulous job. We've had other women presidents, but it's good to know that in 1987 we had our first woman president.
Right. Yeah. So that was pretty important, I think.
Absolutely. Well, Danny, thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks for highlighting these women in rodeo at our own world's oldest rodeo in Prescott, Arizona. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and share and let everybody know to listen in to the Ride With Us podcast. We'll see you next time.